I'm Julie Maxwell. I work as a paediatrician and I also work for Lovewise. I've also been involved in youth work for many years, and I've been really honoured to be part of the author group writing this declaration. I'm going to talk about children this morning, and I'm going to talk about imaginary harm versus real harm. So increasingly, Christian teaching on marriage, sex and identity is seen as harmful. And yet the real harm is being done by the sexualisation of children that is becoming more and more apparent in our society. As a paediatrician, a parent, and previously as a school governor, I've been concerned about the sexualisation of children for many years. And during that time, the situation has only worsened. Almost every day in the media, there are stories of children being exposed to highly sexualised material, whether through social media, relationships and sex education, and even events such as drag queen story times for preschoolers in public libraries. Many parents have become increasingly aware of the nature of some of this material and the concepts their children are being exposed to, and they are unhappy about it. But they do not always feel able to speak out. There are a number of organisations, a growing number, both Christian and secular, who are exposing the ever-growing number of groups delivering this inappropriate content to children and supporting parents to stand up against it. It's vital that church leaders understand what's going on and are able to support their congregations in protecting our children from this great harm. In the name of non-judgmentalism, adults are not teaching children that restraining sexual desires is often good, or that some sexual acts may be harmful or less than ideal. But that is exactly what teenagers need to hear. This is a strikingly different approach to that taken with children over issues such as healthy eating, drugs and alcohol, where we give them clear guidance as to what is healthy and what is harmful. Children are being told that heteronormativity must be smashed, giving the impression that faithful love between a man and a woman is bad. They're not taught about the many well-documented benefits of faithful heterosexual marriage for fear of making children in other types of families feel left out. In the name of being sex positive, all manner of extreme and harmful sexual practices are condoned or even encouraged, with the only caveat being mutual consent. Sex education often focuses heavily on consent, but this does not take into account peer pressure or lack of understanding of potential long-term physical or emotional consequences. The legal age of consent is 16 because it is rightly deemed that below that age a child is not capable of consenting to sex. Yet children are told that only they know when they feel ready. We increasingly hear stories of teenagers feeling pressured into rough sex because they feel that's what is expected of them, and so-called vanilla sex is deemed to be boring. Young children are increasingly taught lessons and read storybooks intended to increase their acceptance of LGBTQ+ people. Some people recognise that talking about sex is inappropriate with young children, so they talk about same-sex relationships in terms which are actually describing friendship. This can lead to confusion, as children may believe that because they like spending time with their same-sex friends, they must actually be gay or bisexual. This is especially problematic when children are questioned about sexuality prior to puberty and before they have experienced any sexual attraction. Friendship is a vital aspect of growing up, and being able to explain to a child that close same-sex relationships are normal and not necessarily an indicator that they might be gay is important. Just this morning on social media, I've seen several posts regarding children being asked if they identify as LGBTQ+. This just introduces doubt and questions into the minds of children who developmentally are unable to make sense of these concepts. And what is most concerning is that so much of this is happening in schools or accessed on the internet via supposedly reputable organisations, including sexual health charities. The very people who should be protecting and safeguarding vulnerable children are in fact exposing them to harm. Of course, many are doing this with the best of intentions, but the approach is causing harm. For too long, Christians have been relatively silent on this issue. When I first started questioning the content of RSE over 10 years ago, I was shocked when several Christian friends were not concerned about what their children were being taught and did not stand with me. Thankfully, I discovered information and support from Lovewise and Family Education Trust, amongst others, and as a result have spent increasing amounts of my time campaigning on these issues. The need is greater than ever for church leaders and pastoral workers to affirm historic Christian teaching on marriage, sex and identity, The Greater Love Declaration encourages and empowers church leaders and parents to be confident in the goodness of relationships as God intended them to be. So I encourage you to join with me in signing the Greater Love Declaration. We as Christians need to be at the forefront of protecting our children from the harmful narratives that surround them and counteract this with a far better story.